Live, live, live. Look, when Darshan comes on for Fraud Pod, there is no music. There is no time for nonsense. Darshan charges a lot per hour, so we can't mess around. We gotta go right into it. Darshan
Uh,
Kulkarni, you're back from India. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I actually did think that you'd do like the Darth Vader entrance music.
For you?
Uh, from because I seem to bring doom and gloom every time I come on.
Every time somebody gets scared about something, and that somebody is always me, by the way, but then there's always others that share in my fear. So it's been a while since we did a fraud pod. Welcome back from India. I'm glad you're back
Thank you.
and only a little bit sick.
Just a little bit sick. I think we're all sharing the same bug that's going around everywhere. So,
Yeah, I had something too. Some microbiome stuff. Gotta have some kombucha.
dude,
But
just such a health nut.
we're both a little under the weather, but we're
Yeah.
here because we could not wait, and we'll be sharing the screen a lot. We're gonna get into the Chevron thing from
Deference
last
thing.
week
Yeah.
and how that relates to clinical research. We're gonna get into two investigators that got caught with their hands in the cookie jar, but just a little appetizer, just more contracts. How often do we get a $2,000 an hour attorney? What is it?
Is that where we are now? Dude,
I
every time I
think.
come on, you give me a raise. I'm going to take it. I just
Well,
want the rest of you guys, I want you to hear what Dan is going to pay me when he hires me for his
that's
latest
right.
gig.
That's right. Um, by the way, Side Owner Academy with their Sean collab coming soon.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
So
exciting, though. We got 5 different videos coming in that scenario.
yeah, actually, I'm working from home today, so I might have a chance to actually review them all and
Yeah.
then
Awesome.
talk to the team. They're all reviewing it too. Um, this is going to be part of it, right? So this is
Yeah.
like the call to action. This is a real life contract I have in front of me from one of my studies. Last time Darshan was on, we went through the conduct of the study for the investigator obligations. This section is section B. So that was an hour plus on just section A. Section B, luckily, is only 2 points. All right. So clinical trial materials and record retention.
Okay,
It's
let's
only
pull it
like
up.
3 paragraphs. I
Oh,
can't
three
pull it up.
paragraphs. That's
Yeah, I can't pull it up,
okay. Okay.
but
Tell me about it.
I'll read it. So, clinical section 1, clinical trial materials. Clinical trial materials, and like you did last time, stop me wherever you think is like a
So my
problem.
first question is that term defined? Or
So
is that the first
you already
sentence
have a
defining it?
problem. You are,
Sure.
you are, yeah.
Okay.
Clinical trial materials, and then it's a colon, and then it
Yep.
explains what it is.
Go ahead.
So clinical trial materials, including study drugs and or device furnished for the study, shall be used solely for the study under the protocol and may not be used for any other purposes. Investigator and institution shall follow sponsors'
Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold
instructions.
on, hold on, hold on.
Yeah.
Right there. So shall only be you. And again, I'm not saying I would make every single change we discuss, but these are the thoughts that go through my head as I
Yes,
read these. So, for
that's why we want
example, in
this.
this case, shall be used only for the protocol. I would change that to be consistent with the protocol. And the reason I draw the distinction is because I want to be sure that if I need to use it in standard of care, because that might be an arm of the protocol, but technically it's not part of the study at that point, or depending on how you're setting it up. I just don't. I want clarity that using it the way it's supposed to be used is still consistent with the terms of the agreement.
Yeah,
So
and oftentimes, other times, like, they'll give you like a weighing scale or a ECG, and
yeah.
it'd be nice to use it on other studies where you don't get those things too.
And then at that point you have to be careful about that because at
Yeah.
that point is it becoming a kickback, so you have to be careful. People have gotten in trouble with it where they say, oh, you know what, we're going to put a refrigerator in your office, and they will leave a refrigerator,
Ah, yeah. Yeah.
and then you use it and use it and use it, and like 4 years later they go, and then it's like it breaks down because it's a refrigerator, uh, but they go, we need it back, and you go, dude, I got rid of it because it doesn't work anymore. And they're
I've
like, no,
actually
no, we can't
had
give it.
yeah, I've
Yeah.
had sponsors give us things like that, and I liked it, so I was like, "Can I buy it off of you?" And they would let us buy it, from them. So,
You have to be
uh,
careful with that because how do you charge fair market value on a used refrigerator?
yeah,
So
yeah. I
those
mean,
that kind of stuff.
what it boiled down to was that sponsor said, "Yeah, we'll sell it to you," and then They never sent me an invoice, and I just kept
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that becomes a possible kickback.
it. Right. Only if you could prove it, Darshan.
It's
Which,
not that
by
hard
the
to
way, this
prove.
video is just storytelling time. None of it's actually true.
It is. No, we're not saying that, and we aren't even talking about you specifically. When I assume you're telling me you, we're talking about theoretical people you've dealt with. But going on.
Yeah, or me, but
Or you, but
but in
I
the
don't really
past,
know. I'm
in
not
the
asking
past,
you a question yet.
I've had a few sites, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Investigator and institution shall follow sponsors' instructions
Hold on,
related.
hold on.
Yeah.
Investigator and institution. Who are the signatories on this thing?
Whew, I think we went through this last time. Let me see.
Yeah.
It's the sponsor,
Uh-huh.
and then so one person there, and then on
Uh-huh.
our side, it's agreed and accepted by Yuma Clinical Trials, which is me,
Yep.
and agreed and accepted by investigator,
I
which is
would push back on that because the investigator is usually not a party to the clinical trial agreement. You could do agreed and acknowledged, but is the PI really getting a chance to negotiate this? So depending on how you're setting it up, I would be careful. In which
Yeah.
case, I don't know if I want to include the PI in the agreement up front, in the record keeping section.
Right. So we probably could have pushed back and said acknowledged if they
Yeah.
still wanted the PI
Yeah.
signature.
Yeah.
What they don't want is sites signing things without the PI knowing,
Correct.
and then the PI doesn't know what they're getting paid. Like that's the logic from the sponsor side.
So this goes back to that conversation you and I had about the corporate practice of medicine, and you've got to be careful what you're allowed to do depending on which state you're in. And if you are in a situation where some states do allow for you to actually, as a clinical trial site, employ a physician to do that, and I'd say there are probably about, if I was making up numbers, like 20, 25 states that do that, but the remaining have some version that require you to either run it through the physician or the physician does it himself. So you've got to be careful on how you set it up and who's acknowledging things. But yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. Investigator and institution shall be responsible for compliance with all laws and regulations applicable to any destruction or disposition of trial materials at the study sites.
Hold on. I want to think about that. So they'll be responsible for all destruction.
Or disposition.
Yeah, I guess my question is, that's totally cool, but then I would probably have some language in there that it shall be done consistent with sites, policies, and procedures.
Site SOPs. Yeah, you should have put that in there. Because our monitor for this study came in last week.
Yeah.
And she was looking at study drug, and she said, "Do you guys want to destroy it, or do you want to send it back?" And I told her our SOP allows for both.
Yeah.
So it depends on what the sponsor prefers. She said sponsor doesn't prefer anything. It's whatever you want. And I said, we'll ship it back.
Yeah. So if the sponsor doesn't do anything, they're going to just dispose it off when it gets there anyway. So theoretically, you just need to have a process to dispose off things. And it saves everyone.
And it's cheaper for us because we'll ship it back. The sponsor pays for the air bill.
Yeah.
We don't have to pay the cost of destroying IP. They do it.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we don't even ship it back. The monitor does. Like when the closeout, the monitor comes and packs it up and everything. So the liability is kind of off of us in a way.
But then you need to have a record. Hold on. I would then make sure that there's a record that she took care of that.
Yeah, they do. They do. They usually do that in multiple ways, like the air bill itself or the itinerary. And
the air bill says there's something left. How do you track that? What was in there?
The itinerary. They put an itinerary in there, and then they'll make a copy.
Great,
and it'll be in the follow-up letter too, usually.
There you go. Perfect.
So, and then number 2, record retention. This is the one that is actually downright insulting for a lot of people.
Go on.
I almost said the sponsor name. Sponsor requires that all study records must be retained for 15 years after completion or termination of the study.
Nope, I would push back on that one.
What would you say?
So I have a few different options that I'd say. So first of all, I would say site will retain records consistent with site practices. and or as may be necessary, but for no more than, I'm making up a number here, 2-3 years. Like it might be something like 7 years. I think usually most states it's like 6 maybe, and then you may have to add a couple of years in just in case. What you often do at some point is you go, we will then try to reach the sponsor if they want to, or sponsor. I even flip it, going sponsor must reach out to site if they want copies of the records. Else at that point, site may either archive and or destroy those records as consistent with its own policies. This way, you put the pressure on the sponsor to reach you, and not because usually I'll represent sponsor sites and CROs, but my experience is that sponsors are constantly getting bought out. They're often evolving. The people you were supposed to reach out to, they've moved on to a new job. It's often impossible to find who you should send these records back to. So if you put it onto the sponsors, they know where you are, they know where to find you, and it's a little bit easier. It's not ideal on either side, but if they want the record so bad, then you know what? Fine, get
Wait,
us.
just a quick side note or
Yeah.
sidebar, since you're an attorney.
Not giving legal advice, though, as you know, as you can see at the bottom.
Oh, it's clearly written on the bottom, like in all caps, not legal advice, or God forbid, medical advice. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the
Yo, you
medical
said you had a
stuff we
question.
talk about here. You have software for negotiating contracts that you're developing.
No, I'm developing a software for sharing documentation
Would you
on.
be interested in collaborating on a software for contracts, and we're doing the budget side?
Yeah, maybe we could talk
That's
about that.
heck,
Sure.
we got a meeting coming up today. If you want to be a
Let's
part of
talk.
it,
Yeah, happy to talk.
okay. Um, we're almost done. And
People are
then we're
not as
getting
interested today.
people are interested in this stuff. We have
Find
more
out.
viewers than we don't have comments because everyone's scared when you come on. Like they don't want to get sued. Um,
I'd be curious if people would have done anything differently so far.
people do all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's investigators that store the records in their
Oh
garage.
yeah, dude.
Luckily, we use Creo, so this stuff's in the cloud,
Yeah,
and in a way, it's kind of like also on Creo shared responsibility.
yeah.
Then the sponsor usually gives you the EDC in a USB format or some link that you could download, which we then upload to Creo.
I've seen everything from Iron Mountain to
We used to
like you
use
said,
Iron
someone's
Mountain.
garage. It's so expensive.
I think cloud storage changes the game because, like, it used to be like 30 years. I mean, we had some foreign sponsors say 30
Yeah,
years,
yeah,
and we tried to push back and they wouldn't. So we had to like get an Iron Mountain. Now,
yeah,
do
and
we
that's
still
expensive.
have those records? No. When those LLCs get dissolved,
Right.
I had to contact every single sponsor and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
site is closed. We're
Right.
gonna ship these back to you." I didn't ask them. I
Right.
told them, "Where can I
Yeah,
ship
but
these
what if you
back?"
couldn't find someone? What would you do then?
Um, destroy. I have documented proof that I'd reached out.
Be careful with that because you
I
don't
know,
know who. But yeah, it is what it is. But that
destroyed, but most of them got, I think 90% got
that's pretty
sent
good.
back. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Some tried to argue, and I said, "I don't think you understand what dissolution means. Like, it's gone. You know, PI's retired. It's gone.
Great.
PI being retired in a in the opinion of an attorney, what does that actually mean?
It depends on what context you're using it in, but specifically,
Agreed
if
and
you mean
accepted.
oh, oh, doesn't change much because again, who is the signatory authority? Like at the top of the agreement would matter. So is the
Me.
PI actually one of so whether you do if you do agree and acknowledge technically? So I wouldn't ever say agree. I would just use acknowledge
I see.
because agree suggests that they were part of the contract negotiation. Acknowledge means I know this thing exists and I'm moving on.
Right. Got to put in the
Um,
software.
yeah,
Okay. Almost done, guys. I
take your time.
know.
And we've got actually we've got Jasmine who is saying she likes Korea too.
Dr. Carrasquillo.
I didn't know how to pronounce that. That's why I did
Carrasquillo.
that.
Carrasquillo. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
and she uses Creo like they do in Latin America.
Ah, I like the Christmas picture, to be honest.
Creo, the Christmas picture. Shout out to Christmas in the middle of July. We
Shout
need
out
it.
to Christmas.
We need it. We need it back. It's 115 here today.
Oh,
Okay.
dude.
The investigator and our institution shall use their best efforts to prevent
Whoa, never,
premature
never, never,
destruction.
never agree to best efforts. Never agree to best efforts.
I feel like what I did when my site dissolved was my best effort.
No, so that's not how that works. Best efforts means you go find every single. No, there's a reason you don't. You say reasonable efforts.
So
You
what
don't.
I did when the company dissolved, literally go in the storage, look at every box, find every contact, and email them all multiple times. That's not best effort.
Nope.
That's a
Best efforts
reasonable
is
effort.
best efforts is you drive to that dude's house, knock on his door, just be like, "Hey, you know what? I know you're in the bathroom. Can I give you some toilet paper first?" And
Wow.
then, yeah, it's
So should reasonable effort be used instead?
reasonable. And I wouldn't
Yeah,
even.
I'm learning. I'm learning from you, man. I'm learning. Okay, reasonable effort would have been better.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's it.
There you go.
Oh no, one more. This is
Okay.
actually what applied to me 10 years ago. If
Okay.
there is a change of responsibility slash ownership of study records, example, investigator retires,
Hold on.
or
Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. If there's a change in ownership of study records,
yeah, like investigator retires or hospital closes.
that's not change in ownership, though.
Change of responsibility slash ownership.
Either way, that is not a scenario in which either one of those two things is happening. I mean, I get their position, but I don't think that the first half matches the second half.
How would you have worded it
Oh,
differently?
in the event that study records need to be transferred, I'm not sure you need to get into the ownership part of it at all. But going on, what happens there?
It seemed to me very reasonable. Institution and our investigator must promptly notify sponsor.
Nope. Because the truth is, what happens if you can't find them? Must promptly notify.
Documented sent email.
Yeah, but you sort of already said best efforts.
We'll change that to reasonable.
Okay, so assuming reasonable efforts, what I like to do, again, what you're doing is the more practical version, and you're taking on a certain amount of risk
That's
by
where I live,
saying,
man. I live in
I know,
that space.
I know you do. As a lawyer, I like to get rid of that risk before it starts.
Hmm.
So what I like to do is go, look, you as the sponsor need to reach out to me in 7 years and decide if you want these records, and we'll transfer them to you. If not, and we have to decide whether those records even belong to you. So, for example, patient records will belong to the patients, but study records will belong to the sponsor. You can have them. I don't want them after that point.
Right.
But yeah, to me, that's how I would deal with it.
Okay.
Because I
And
don't
that's it.
want to be responsible. Yeah.
That's the entire section for B. Thank God it was only two paragraphs and it was 18 minutes, but this is like a beautiful mini
Amuse
video.
bouche.
Producers post edit at 1832 on contracts and budgets archiving. Thank you, producers. They're listening.
You
They're
got a
listening.
team going here.
Yeah, they're behind. Like they got makeup artists right there. They're ready. They're on standby. Same people that got Biden ready for his debate.
I am so not touching the political stuff right now.
I will. All right, let's go.
Actually, did you know he had the White House just had a whole clinical trials summit? Did you see that?
No, well, I'm sure Craig Lipset went.
I think he did actually go.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me see if I can pull it up.
I didn't see any humble brag pictures from anyone, so I don't know if any. I just haven't been following the news feed.
Can you see my screen?
Oh, let me share it because Darshan's got like we told you guys. We've got. Let me see. Yeah, here we go. Readout of White House Clinical Trials Forum. So, what do they actually do at this thing?
So they talked about the diversity action plans, which came out last week. I don't know if you saw that guidance that came out.
Yeah. I mean, sure.
And they were talking about inequalities. They're talking about here was what they actually focused on.
Strengthening the community engagement infrastructure.
They really need to be talking to Dan Safari about this, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, hey, reach out. I don't know if I would want to work with the White House, but reach out, I guess. Cringe face.
You know what? In
Uh,
the end, you're trying to help America. Put your differences aside. Focus on what your goal is.
but see, I have a different philosophy than the current White House
But it
administration.
doesn't matter. Your goal is to help patients. Your
Right.
goal is to help America. And your goal is to help work with people who are as smart as you to see if you can get ahead. To me, that's how I see it. Politics, to me, I don't really get into politics at all. I'm not a huge party person in any scenario.
Yeah, I'm not
But
either, but we can't have our head in the sand and think three-letter institutions. This is a perfect segue for the next thing, by the way.
but
Three-letter
yeah, so
institutions
first
are
one
actually
was
going to do.
community engagement. Second was clinical trial recruitment and evidence generation, which to me is directly on point with the post you made, and I still keep getting notifications
Yeah,
about, which is why is there not enough innovation in clinical trial recruitment? I don't know if you've been seeing
something like
your
that. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Centering people in clinical trial design. I feel like this is one of those things that people have been talking about, and this is patient
Centering
centricity, in
people
other
in
words.
clinical trial design. Okay, yeah. I mean, aren't these things like common sense we should have been doing since the beginning of clinical trials? Like, I think
Sad part is we still aren't doing it, right?
who was the guy that clinical trials day is after? Captain Lind, was it?
Who?
Who made his ship the people on the ship get rid of scurvy by vitamin C? Like he kept adding.
Oh,
He
oh,
gave his
I
captains vitamin C because like the British didn't want to drink that stuff, and then
I'd
when
never
they
heard that
saw that the
before.
captains were drinking it, he started giving them once a week, like as a treat,
I didn't know
and
that.
then he
Interesting.
prevented scurvy. Yeah,
I just learned something
James
new.
James Lind, I believe. I mean, that
Uh,
was people centric. Like, why do we need White House in 2024 to tell us
because
this when they
how do you
got
expand this and how do you cause it at a national level? Because it goes into clinical trial readiness, so that you're preparing for the next COVID or the next bird flu.
new strategies for national clinical trials readiness? Yeah, I mean, we should be preparing for metabolic conditions, cancer,
Yeah, yeah.
genetic, not necessarily the next pandemic.
Well, I think it's so. Russia right now, you would think that it is being crushed because of most of the world sort of not uh, being allowed to do business with Russia, except that from what I read, I literally read this somewhere, that Russia's economy is incredibly like super chugging along, and that's because it's the war economy. So
Mm.
war and like pandemics have a way of getting the economy to do things it's never done before. So to that point, if you get into pandemic responses and national clinical trial readiness, you'll be able to do that at a time when money's flowing in a space that you actually want to get money flowing into.
Yeah,
And I
no, I
think,
understand
yeah,
it attracts finance, but
yeah.
there's plenty of finance being attracted in our space. Our industry is one of the best industries out there. Like, you could argue recession proof almost at this point, post COVID.
I wouldn't go that far.
You can argue.
As a lawyer, I can argue almost anything. That
Exactly.
doesn't.
So yeah, I didn't know about this, and
Yeah,
nor do I care too much about it.
fair enough.
But if you went there, shout out to you with your selfie in front of the White House. They actually care.
By the way, they are doing all these things like the moonshot and stuff like that for people who are interested. So keep an
We
eye out.
haven't been back to the moon. Don't get me started, man. Let's go to something.
Moonshot does not mean going to the moon.
No, I know. It means something equivalent to going to the moon.
Sure, yeah.
Cure
There's a cancer
cancer.
shot that he was talking about,
Enrolling
including
minorities
research.
in enrolling minorities in studies has become a moonshot. Let's move on.
Okay, you can take this off the screen.
Oh. Yeah, since when has enrolling minorities in trials been a moonshot?
It
Is now.
hasn't. So I'm curious
Welcome
what
to
you're talking about.
2024. This is like something that should be common sense logic has become equivalent to a moonshot.
Dude, you're just using the word moonshot because you like the word moonshot right now.
We
There's
just
only
saw
one
it.
moonshot in the healthcare space that they've announced, and that's the cancer
Listen.
moonshot, which I have on the screen right now if you want it.
Okay,
But
that they need to do. I'm all for this. I'm
there you
all
go.
for this. Cancer moonshot, ending cancer as we know it. So what are they doing? Cancer touches every American in some way. Second lane of
Progress. Here we go.
death.
Expanded access, prevent more cancers, drive new innovation. Let's see what that means. I have friends who are actually working with ARPA-H, precision cancer
Adapt
therapy, precision
program.
surgical programs, Cure It, this matrix program. Oh, here you go. Core for interoperability.
United States Court
And
data
here's a clinical. NCI's clinical trials innovative unit has developed a streamlined submission evaluation process.
Yeah. Cancer, like oncology is always its own, like almost mini industry within our industry. Like everything we discuss, it's like, yes, it's still about oncology, but that's like its own world. That's maybe one of the only indications I'm aware of where patients don't get paid for the most part to be in studies, and it's very different world.
In many cases they're in there because I actually used to work for a one of my clients was a national cancer institute, and the patients are often in there because one of two things: they've really run out of hope, so they're going, "I'll take anything," and then there's the others who've given up hope and are saying, "I'm doing this for the next set of people so that they don't have to go through it."
Yeah.
So it's a very different feeling.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, we definitely need that. I think that is possible in our lifetime.
You think?
Yeah.
You do realize cancer is not one thing. So how do you cure cancer?
I know, but making progress, extending life, survival rates, making
there've been a few cancer treatments like that.
Yeah.
One was Gleevec, which I remember reading about it all those years ago.
Well, even breast cancer with the immunotherapy, like that's
a lot of the immunotherapies. Yeah,
that's a recent innovation in the last decade. That's extending lives of people with breast cancer.
I think that's part of the question, especially in cancer. What is the goal of treatment? And that's where patient centricity really came into play. Because I think we all worked with this idea that the goal of cancer therapy should be extending lives. Turns out patients are like
survival rates is the main endpoint, right?
And that's the problem. Turns out if you talk to a lot of patients, they're going, I'd rather just have a good life.
Right.
And that's a fundamentally different set of questions to ask. And that changes the endpoints. And that's where patient centricity became more and more important. The moment you started realizing that what patients want versus what other people want for them are very different things.
Right, but not all patients will just want a good life. Many will want an extended life, even if it's somewhat good.
But the question is, we should have that conversation with enough patients to understand what they actually want. And those conversations weren't happening.
That's not just limited to cancer. That's limited to mental illness. That's limited. That relates to a lot of things.
Agreed. But that speaks to, again, whether the cancer moonshot or what were the other moonshots we talked about? The other,
I said enrolling a minority has become a moonshot.
Yeah, not that one. But yeah, this clinical trials forum.
The White House maybe didn't put it that way, but it's true.
Yeah.
What's next? Anyway, we've been waiting half an hour for this Chevron thing, which I know very little about. I haven't been reading. I've seen the headlines. I watched the podcast on it, halfway listening. So I knew you would come back from India and educate me on what's going on with the Chevron thing, particularly its significance with the clinical research industry.
Okay. So essentially, going back probably
about 40 years. For this one? Or?
You want some with that? You want me to put something on the screen?
If you have, I don't know if you had one.
Sure. Give me a second. There you go. Let me pull it. I'll pull something up.
Just a little visual. For those listening, don't worry. I will do my best to play-by-play, color commentate all this stuff.
Just a second. I think this is a good non-partisan. SCOTUS blog is a good one.
By the way, I'm registered independent and have never voted for any president on either party ever in my life.
I used to vote, There was one vote probably about 10 years ago. I tried to go vote, and they were like, they made me wait in line, and then they were like, you. After like an hour and a half, they made me go, yeah, you've registered somewhere else. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing this again. Never
Deshaun's like,
voted
you
for the
know how
last
much
10 years.
I make per hour? Why waiting in this line has cost me
Do you know
a
Dan
couple
Sefer
billable
says I make
hours.
$2,000 an hour?
Yeah, exactly. I better be cut to the front of this line.
Anyways, but anyway, so the point here was going back about 40 years. The idea was that the Supreme Court came out and said, if you've got, okay, let's actually start from the beginning. Everyone knows that all the power everyone has in the government comes from the Constitution. Under the Constitution, you have three separate branches of government. You've got the executive, which is the president. You've got Congress, and then you've got the judiciary. When Congress makes laws, so the Food, Drugs, and Cosmetics Act, that came from Congress. When Congress makes laws, the executive figures out how to make those laws actually occur, how to actually propagate those laws. So the regulations you see, the guidances you see, are based on the actual law, the Food, Drugs, and Cosmetics Act, for example. So that's usually how things work. Now, what would happen is that the court would say, under the Chevron decision, under the Chevron deference standard, essentially the court would say, is it reasonable how the FDA in this case, working under the president, is it reasonable how the FDA interpreted the law? And if it was reasonable, we're going to let that happen. We're not going to sit and second guess the FDA. That's not okay. You know what? Let them do their thing. They're a bunch of experts there. That was the logic. Seems like a totally reasonable thing to do. But the result of that is, and that's, I can totally see why people go, well, the experts should be in charge of showing the expertise. What just came out in the Looper case, and it's here. This was the original case, Chevron versus Natural Defense.
Chevron versus Natural Resources Defense Council.
Yeah. In Loper Bright Enterprises, which is the one that overruled it, and it came out obviously in Relentless as well. Essentially, what they said is, just to be clear again, not legal advice, but yeah. Essentially, what they said was that, why does the FDA get deference? Isn't that the equivalent of the fox being in charge of the henhouse? The FDA decides how to interpret the law, and then decides whether that was reasonable, and that's a problem. We, as the courts, we've always been in charge of evaluating that process. We're not saying that we're making the clinical decision. We're not saying that we're making the medical decision, but we're saying that, is that actual process a reasonable way to do it? And making sure that they are, that the FDA is taking all reasonable steps to make that happen. For example, are they interpreting past what the law is actually enabled to do? And that's what the Chevron deference standard did. It basically stopped the fox being in charge of the henhouse. It doesn't
all
change
federal agencies, right?
for all federal agencies. So this is going to apply to the EPA. It's going to apply to the FDA, to HHS, to SEC, everything. Now, everyone's making a big deal saying, you know what? That changes the balance of power. Well, technically speaking, the power should never have been with the FDA.
Right.
And
the Constitution, right?
Under the Constitution was always with the judiciary.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the impact of this on an actual routine basis? And I'm using sort of summary words, and I'm sure I could phrase it better if I had like a presentation to go through with this. But the general idea being, essentially, the FDA can go, trust us, we're right. And how often does that pop up? So, for example, if the FDA puts out a guidance,
In every audit, no?
well, no. So those are not really affected in the same way.
Okay.
It's going to come up more in the context of, so you're not really challenging the FDA at the audit level.
What about at the drug approval level?
It's coming more at the legal, the regulation development level.
I see.
So, for example, if they say you need to have two double-blinded placebo-controlled trials, someone can go, why two?
Oh, okay. And then they could change it later and say you need 3.
Correct. Correct.
And so
Correct.
the Supreme Court just said, hey, you're not in
You
charge
can't just
of
make stuff up.
making these regulations. You're in charge of enforcing what is already agreed upon.
You're allowed to enforce what was created. So if Congress said that
Congress has to create it.
Congress has to create the law,
Okay,
and
and the
then
FDA can't just do its own thing anymore and say, okay, we interpret it this way and let's release this
correct.
guidance. And even though it's not actual regulation, it's a guidance, we're going to
Yeah.
enforce it. But isn't diversity part of that? Like, isn't the
Theoretically, it could be,
diversity?
and I expect that diversity will probably come under some challenges. There's a whole thing going on right now around lab developed tests. I don't know if you've seen that come up in your stuff, but
No, I haven't seen anything come up.
yeah.
By the
So
way, if you went to this White House thing, send me a selfie. I'll repost it so you can humble brag more.
I did not, just to be clear.
I know you're in India. That's much better use of your time, by the way.
So where was I with this?
The lab test.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this decision is less than a week old at this point. You've already got 2 lawsuits based on this in the healthcare space.
Who's doing?
So the first was in the lab developed test space. So essentially, what it was here's a really good way to look at it. Who is the woman who went to jail? Blonde hair.
Elizabeth Holmes.
There you go, Elizabeth
She should
Holmes.
be the cover image for Fraud Pod.
Except her entire thing was based on LDTs. It was based on lab developed tests, and that's what's going to get challenged. So the FDA said, so essentially what lab developed tests were was that if it originally started with this concept of, you know what, if I'm working in my doctor's office, if I'm a doctor working in my office, I've got like 4 patients and I want to give them a certain lab test that I'm using for myself, then you know what, I don't really need to go through FDA approval for that. And the FDA is like, fine, whatever. We don't need to worry about those little labs that are doing this kind of stuff.
Judgment, your patient.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
It's just another tool for you to use as a physician.
Yeah. Here's what happened then. People said, well, what if we just keep one site and we get lab samples from all over the country? And we still make the test, we just never go through FDA approval. And that's what you started getting. You have these massive
but those
global
would be
companies.
cash pay only, no? Those wouldn't be.
No, not necessarily. They were being reimbursed through Medicare and Medicaid as well.
I see.
So the problem became that these organizations basically said, we don't need FDA approval because they essentially started going through CMS, and we just need to collect it and just go through one individual site. And
site? When you talk about site in this context,
I mean one individual location is what I meant in that specific situation, like a doctor's office, a central lab, for example. Yes. And that was how things were operating. In about 6 months ago, the FDA came out and said, yeah, we're gonna have to stop this because we don't even know if these tests work most of the time. We saw a lot of that happening, for example, during COVID, where a lot of the tests were lab developed tests, basically. And some tests worked, some tests didn't work, blah, blah, blah. And the FDA said we need to stop these shenanigans, and it's been going on for too long. The entire industry, we're talking a multi-billion-dollar industry, said, wait a second, what do you mean? We can't just stop it. And now they're sort of suing the FDA.
So the industry is pushing back. Again,
Correct.
Our industry is like the biggest lobbying group.
But on what basis are we going to push back yet, for example? So for example, another industry I fully expect something will happen is like vaping.
Right. Yeah, you've been on that for a while. But let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Practical one. Like, again, it's your opinion.
Yeah.
Do you think this helps smaller sites, or not sites, smaller companies in our industry have a more equal playing field? Because typically the larger companies, when they get big, they want to protect what they've created, and then they start lobbying for regulations to keep.
I don't think at a practical level, my general opinion is at the practical level, change will be glacial. It's not no one's gonna try to upset the apple cart as it exists right now. This because it's just too much effort. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, it's just too much effort. People are already entrenched in what they're doing. They have no incentive to go back and try to change things. But new rules, as they start coming, people will say, well, do I really agree with this rule? How does this really help me with these new rules? And that question, that examination will start becoming more reasonable. That's where Part 15 hearings were supposed to play a bigger role, which is you could basically say, here's a regulation I'm putting out. Everyone comment on it. I think the LDT one, they did exactly that.
Who's putting out the
so
regulation?
The FDA will put out a proposed regulation and say, here's what we're going to regulate.
How does it have to get approved now? Because before they can just put it out and they would approve it.
Well, so here's what would happen, right? The FDA would put a proposed regulation and then say we're going to have either a Part 15 hearing or we're going to ask for like 60 days of comments or 90 days of comments, and you guys can all comment on it. You've seen responses to comments. You've seen comments to guidances and the like.
About it on the show before.
Yeah. So in the same way, people will come on, they will comment, and in the LDT space, it was like 3,000, 4,000 comments, if I remember correctly. So it's a pain in the butt, which is why the FDA is not a huge fan of that process, because it takes so long to do it right. Mm-hmm. So what did the FDA start doing? You know what? We're just not going to post any kind of regulation. We're just going to put out a guidance. It's a draft guidance. It's just our thoughts on the matter. It's not enforceable. But we all know it's enforceable because it's the FDA.
And diversity is one of the biggest one as of late.
Well, it's going to happen. And let's be honest, there is a reason for the diversity guidance. The diversity guidances exist because not all patients were being represented. So
right.
If all your studies,
I think I'm all for it.
I'm not saying you aren't. I'm not saying you aren't, but I feel like the point being, we need to take away the word diversity, which is what triggers a lot of people, from the goal of the process, which is making sure that in your healthcare statistics, those are being appropriately represented.
Make sure, the representation matches up with the actual representation of the people that would take the drug. Exactly. But okay, so now if they issue a guidance.
Correct. Now people go.
Now they can't enforce that.
It's going to become harder because now people are going to say, well, first of all, you put out the guidance, is that, and this has less to do with the Chevron deference standard, but you might go, you know what? Do you even have the authority under the actual law to propose this guidance? So for example, the law is too vague.
FDA.
Repeat that sentence for me.
There's going to be a lot of lawsuits against the FDA.
Yes.
And you're going to be busy, man. Darshan, you will be at 5,000 an hour.
Dude, at this rate, no one's going to hire me. As you keep raising my rate, just to be clear, I do not charge anywhere close to these numbers.
Not yet. Wait till this starts happening.
But yeah, so that's what the Chevron deference standard means. It's that the courts will stop deferring to agencies.
So this is a done deal.
Oh, it's a done deal. There's no more appealing or anything.
And this is not just for our industry, but for every industry.
Correct. Now, what can happen, just to be clear, theoretically, what could happen is Congress could come out and pass a new law that creates some level of deference, and then the court would have to evaluate whether that's okay or not.
Okay, so Congress could pass a law that says, well, guidance is passed under these criteria,
theoretically,
or something like that.
Theoretically, I'm not sure.
They can propose.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why they'd pass something like that, but sure, theoretically, that might be a thing they could do.
Okay. All right. Just trying to get some clarity here for the guru.
Are we still good? Because we're at our 1 hour limit.
Do you need to get on a call, or do you want to get into?
No, I got time, but I'm always like.
A little bit of time too.
I feel like people have not commented today as much. So either we scared the crap out of them or bored them.
You scare the crap out of a lot of people.
I'm really not trying to.
You have, let's see, at noon Pacific. Wait, no, not noon Pacific. There's a meeting today.
Oh, yeah?
That you probably need to be on.
Tell me more.
I have to tell you, the software thing.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
I have to find what time it actually is.
Cool. Let me know.
I'm trying to see if we can still go live right now. I hope it's not 8 Pacific. I don't think so. I don't think I did that. I wouldn't be that dumb. No, 3 Pacific. You're good? 6 Eastern?
Hold on. I should be just a
Just
second.
a little quickie there, Sean.
Yeah, 3 Pacific should work. Wait, what is that? 3
No, 3
Pacific, is that the
Pacific
same
and
as
6
1?
Eastern. No, that's you're thinking India or something. 6 Eastern.
Oh, it goes the other way. I keep thinking that. Oh,
Yeah, we're on the West Coast.
yeah.
Not the West Coast of India, West Coast of US.
Seriously, I was in India for 2 weeks. Can't believe the
I
amount of
know,
shit
but
I'm
your
getting
mind's
over this.
still there. Your mind's still there. You're a
Uh,
cricket fan now.
dude, I am so not. I
saw
don't
the
like
post.
sports. It's not my thing. Yeah, I'm sure I can make it. I'm sure I can make it.
Okay.
Just
They'll
send
be
me the
surprised.
information.
They'll be surprised to have our legal representation on the Zoom taking notes. Darshan, don't charge me for this one, man. It's free, okay?
No.
All right, let's get into these 2 doctors doing
Okay,
up
cool.
to
We're gonna
some
do that. Okay,
shenanigans. So
we'll
from
keep
the
it tight.
FDA having powers reduced on the on enforcing new regulations.
Just the deference, not that their
on
powers are
enforcing
being
new
reduced.
enforcing new
Yeah.
guidelines.
Yeah.
Now we're getting into
Fraud pod.
This is welcome 45 minutes later to Fraud Pod. No, it's been Fraud Pod the whole time. Professor charged for operating multi-million-dollar grant fraud scheme.
So here's the first thing. So
Wow.
a few years ago, what used to happen was that I talked to these doctors, and they would always go, "Yeah, you know what? No one ever goes after grant stuff. Like, I'm good. I'm just gonna. I'm trying to do this research. I'm gonna get a new grant, and it's gonna fund all the stuff that I have to pay for the past, and then it's gonna pay for the future as well." And they'd always get onto this grant scheme. I don't mean that in a bad way. They basically try to pay off their old debts using a new grant, and that would just keep paying forward. Except that's
Right.
not how grants work. When you apply to a grant, you're saying, "Here's how my money will be used in the future." It's not intended to pay for things in the past. And when the government finds out, you will see them crack down on it more and more. I will admit, and this is probably not the nicest thing to say, but I'm seeing a lot of the crackdown to be targeted. And I mean this with all due respect, but to be targeted to what I would consider to be Asian citizens. I find that really weird to say, but I'm not saying that they're the only ones to do it. In fact, I think they're being targeted. And I think that's a little unfair. I don't mean Asian citizens. I mean Asians in general. I'm sure Dr. Wang is not an Asian citizen. He's a tenured medical professor in a medical school, but he was a consultant and an advisor to a publicly traded biopharmaceutical company. I find that fascinating that they do not trade a Texas biopharmaceutical company. They don't say what the name is. I find that to be fascinating.
So why would they? Okay, yeah, I don't know why they didn't name.
Well, they may not name it because the company may have had nothing to do with it. But he basically was filing grant applications to the NIH for funding for potential treatment and diagnostics for Alzheimer's, which resulted in a $16 million of grants between 2017 and 2021. Wow. And this was related to phase 1 and phase 2 studies.
So this is preclinical stuff he was doing.
No, phase 1 and phase 2.
Oh, okay, sorry. Phase 1 and phase 2.
So yeah. So
at one institution.
Out of one institution. So essentially what it looks like is he was a full-time doctor at a university. A lot of these doctors will be in scenarios where they are key opinion leaders, as many people would call them. And they will serve on boards, and they will serve as consultants, and they'll do research still. And they'll get the money for the research, but it's for false.
Wow.
It's not for the right reasons.
In the words of Borat, wah wah wee wah. 20 years in prison, a maximum penalty of 10 years for the count of major fraud, 20 years in prison for each count of wire fraud, and 5 years in prison for the count of false statements.
Yeah.
Can you give us your opinion on what he did and how prevalent this kind of behavior is? Because this is
incredibly prevalent. Incredibly prevalent. Here, let me see if I can pull it up.
Break it down in layman's terms. What's happening for us in the industry-sponsored trials that have to eat what we catch?
So in industry-sponsored trials, you're not usually going and applying for federal grants.
Never.
So it's not as much of an issue. for small sponsors and small sites.
Right.
Well, let me rephrase that. For small sites, small
Small sites.
sponsors often take research from universities. So those small sponsors may be exposed to exactly this type of issue
Through the tech transfer offices, no?
through the tech transfer offices. Exactly
That's a
right.
huge business stream right there.
Yeah.
Huge. We need an entire pod on that.
We could absolutely talk about tech transfer offices whenever you want to.
They're very important.
They are
To feed the biotech ecosystem.
correct.
But they're wrapped, apparently. I mean, if you're saying this is the tip of the iceberg, you're very conservative in your statement.
We could do a whole
You basically said
series.
this is rampant behavior.
It's you're going to see a lot of problems. And I could pull up. We could do a whole fraud pod on that, on just grant fraud.
I think we should.
Okay, we'll talk about grant fraud at some point.
So if you're out
let me make a list of all the things that Dan wants to talk about, because he wants to talk about grant fraud. What was the other thing you want to talk about?
Grant fraud. What else was it? Don't make me watch this again. AI.
Isn't that what the team is?
Exactly. AI is my team. They'll transcribe it. I can't remember, man.
Fair enough. But there's another one, and there was another one that we said we'd have a whole thing on. So, telemedicine fraud. That was the other one we were going to talk about.
That was the one with DCT. My favorite topic, DCT. Can we just like put the nail in the coffin on DCT, or is it still alive?
It's still alive.
It's still alive.
Right now, AI is just taking over. That's all it is. We just keep jumping from buzzword to buzzword.
Right.
The funny thing is, as much I love AI, don't get me wrong, but I feel like I can sense the buzz dying out.
I mean, it's becoming more ingrained in my life.
Right.
Like every week.
It's gone from being the cool new thing to I know what you can do. You can't replace a person. You can give me like a 10th grade version of what I need, and that's gonna be great for what I need to work with for now.
Yeah. Like Charlie Munger said, worldly wisdom. You know, he said you should pick 5 disciplines and have at least a freshman level education in each of those. I think the AI is going to give everyone that opportunity, like easily.
Right.
I was watching Inside Out 2 with my wife. Great movie.
How was it? I haven't seen that one.
Excellent. Highly recommend.
Is that Disney?
Preview, yeah, Pixar. The preview was Google Gemini, which is their AI.
Yeah.
And it was teaching the masses the next wave of Google. This is
just to be clear, it's garbage. I keep trying to use it. It's garbage.
Yeah,
I don't use it.
I don't use it. I pay for ChatGPT. I also pay for Grok on Twitter, or on X. But
I want to blame you, by the way. I want to blame you on your show, just to be clear.
Please.
Because every time I come on, you've told me, Darshan, you need to put out your opinions. You don't put out your opinions. So I've become a really opinionated asshole. So I blame you for this, just to be clear. Dude, everything I'm recording now, I'm just going, yeah, this is crap. Like right now, I would never comment on Google or talk about how it's unfair that Asian Americans are being targeted. That is not what I do. And but you were like, you know what? People want to hear. And so I'm trying. It's hard.
You got to plant seeds, and who cares? Who cares if they hate, man? What did 50 Cent say lyric in the club song?
I'm sorry.
Go way back.
Just to be clear, you really think I would know the answer to that question?
I actually think you might, more than sports, but he said, if they hate, then let them hate and watch the money pile up.
Fair enough. I do not know that. I'm not up on my rap or whatever this is.
I mean, it's like maybe it's song number 1 of like the 2000s. Yeah,
no. I'm very much a movie person, not a music person.
Okay. I'm okay. All right. So this is going to be a whole episode on its, because the grant fraud, I know very little about, other than I know it's there. Academia is like a cesspool of this kind of stuff.
Hold on. You always make me do this. Hold on. Let me see if I can.
Academia is the cesspool of this stuff. You just said it's rampant.
Yeah, here. I think I brought this up for you as well. This is
Office of Research Integrity.
Let's look at. You said this is University of San Diego and Utah. This is 2024, by the way. This is
Yeah.
Albany College of Pharmacy and Sciences. This
What are
is
these things?
Baylor. This is all investigation conducted. It's research fraud usually. It's all research fraud, research
Wow.
misconduct. This is what it is.
So is it like a ticker in real time? Like every day, if you hit refresh, there's something new on here?
It's not as much as real time, but it's a lot.
It's like a stock ticker.
Here, this one.
Oh,
This is
there's only
University of
been 3
Pennsylvania.
more. That's
This is just 2023. Let me just pull up the university so you know it's not like some 2-bit university. That was Penn. This is Will Cornell.
Cornell,
This is Utah.
Utah. Shout out to the Utes.
Rosalind Franklin.
The
I don't
Utes got a
actually know
good
where
football
Rosalind
team.
Franklin is. Laura Hua is North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
UNC. You know who went
Yep,
to UNC?
UNC.
Very famous basketball player.
Do
No,
not know.
seriously.
University of
Michael
Alabama.
Jordan. Michael Jordan.
Oh, Jordan. Yeah,
Alabama.
fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. This is Ohio State and Johns Hopkins. Auburn.
Wow.
Yale.
And we're sponsored, by the way. These are all our sponsors too for the
And Will Cornell. And let me see. Oh, here. And just to be clear, it's every year, right? So this is 2024. We're 6 months in. They're basically going at this pace.
Well, that's like I would expect a lot more. We're halfway through 2024.
I'm expecting probably another 6 based on just purely this.
But the ones that you just showed, will that make it here too? Or is that where you got it from?
That'll probably land up here as well.
Okay, so it's not like updated.
Actually, you know what? Come to think of it, wait, hold on a second. Research integrity. So here's the criteria.
There's so much fraud. Like this is just the tip of the iceberg. Like these are the
so we can do a whole thing on just what is research integrity misconduct and research misconduct. So we can have that whole conversation.
You think that guy would come on our pod? The guy who Wang, what's his name?
Oh,
Dr. Wang.
Oh, Dr. Wang. I don't think he's gonna come on our pod. No.
Can we try? I mean,
you can try if you like.
The story.
I'd love to hear his side of the story.
I know it would be very neutral. Like, hey, we just want to know what's going on. Like, you've got a difficult job, and
it's a hard time. Yeah, I don't know if I was being targeted right now and dealing with this. Do I really want to get onto a public forum and start talking about it? If I was an attorney,
I mean,
these guys are not messing around.
It's our podcast. Ours is like so docile.
Yeah, but this is an indictment on June 28th. He's probably got lawyers up the wazoo telling him not to talk, as he probably shouldn't.
Right. I'm joking. I mean, I doubt any of these guys would come on. They try to operate in secrecy.
Well, there are some people. You can probably get some of these people to come on. What's that?
Can you try to find his LinkedIn or something?
Oh, sure. That's easy.
Maybe one of us is connected. It'll be easier.
I would not be that surprised. So let's pick someone older. Let's say Ya Wang from Emory.
Common of a name, though. Like, we're going to get a bunch of results. Ya Wang Emory?
Yeah. You pulling anyone up?
Shout out to Emory, by the way. I talked to a few other people. There's way too many Ya Wangs from Emory.
Really?
Yeah.
Hold on. This is a PhD. Oh, MD PhD. How many MD PhDs will there be?
Like, I would think people doing this wouldn't want to be public.
Well, but they may still have a public presence.
Yeah. Oh, Yaping Wang, Chief Medical Officer. I don't know if this is him though.
Well, we don't know if it's him at all.
Yeah. Well,
but notice how you're seeing more and more Asian. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I just find that to be unusual.
It's not the same one. It's not the same guy.
Oh, fair enough. Let's try Carlos Spirilli from Yale.
Yeah, that might be easier to find. Carlos Spirilli, Yale. Guru Nation, this is riveting stuff, by the way. We're just trying to interview one of these people that got convicted of fraud.
Not convicted. Hold on, not convicted.
Oh, sorry.
Some people are just accused. Indicted.
My bad. No.
Maybe
these people, man.
I had someone pop up for me at one point. I
Yeah.
remember doing that. So you'd have to just literally go through these a
Yikes.
little bit.
And in fairness to them, they got their side of the story. Like, hey, the way the system is, it's like it makes it very easy to accuse you of it, even though it's not the case. And I know there's two
Uh,
sides to the story.
here we go.
Who you got?
William
William
Armstead.
Armstead. No photo. Oh, is this the dude? No, that's not. That was Wang
That was William Armstead right there. I imagine.
from Harvard or from UPenn.
And yeah.
And what's his profile? Let's go.
So he was accused of knowingly and intentionally falsifying or fabricating 51 figures methods, including various vasoactive agents on the neurological response to traumatic brain injury in piglets, and did all of these things.
51 counts of making this stuff up. So can you
Yeah.
go to his profile real quick? Maybe his last comment was his last post was a retweet of yours.
So he will exclude doing this and exclude from serving any advisory board capacity.
Well, let's see what he's doing now.
Well, it's quiet, right?
Professor, 57 followers. I believe he follows Darshan, actually. He's a
No, third. It's a third connection. Dude does not follow me. But yeah. So, and
Interesting.
again, you know what? There are two sides to the story. I don't know his side, but
Yeah.
yeah. I'm sure we
Well,
can
you're
look up.
saying this is rampant, so like I think we need to do some investigative journalism and look into this.
We could do a lot of stuff in this space.
Yeah. And there's one more
Um,
too, but I mean, some Angela Ritter. What can we just go to her real quick?
Sure. So, Angela Ritter, this came out 2 days ago.
Fresh off the
Uh,
presses.
Fresh off the presses. And this is a warning letter. So, it was not resolved at the, essentially, there was an inspection in 2023. So, this is for the people who kind of go, oh, yeah,
By
you know
way,
what the
this is
FDA has
not
done?
the person with grant fraud. This is something else.
This is something else, yes.
Yeah.
This really goes to being sponsor investigators.
Yeah.
So they're doing both parts. So they're responsible for following a bunch of rules, not just as an investigator, but also as a sponsor.
Investigator initiated trials. Yeah,
Exactly.
we used to help investigators do this kind of stuff.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Interesting. So
That's
this goes
how I know a
into
little bit about immunotherapy from that.
So again, this was going to the expanded access protocol. It's part of the FDA's bioresearch monitoring program, and it was sort of they got the Form 483 in September, and then there was a written response.
Failed to adhere to requirements for expanded access uses. What's this?
So these are the findings. So I'm basically setting up the stage about what happened. So this was in September 23. They had a written response. They gave a response in August 23, and there was some additional correspondence in September, but they did not find it satisfactory. So one was you failed to adhere to the requirements of expanded access uses. So as a sponsor investigator, you're supposed to comply with all these requirements. You did not do so. And here were the specific findings.
FDA authorized the subcutaneous administration of the drug weekly for up to 2 weeks. Subject was administered day 0 and on day 7 as authorized. However, subject continued to receive investigational drug between May 29th and March 28th instead of during the authorized 2 weeks only. This subject was administered an additional 50 doses of the investigational drug that were not authorized under.
Basically, they were just making up the protocol as they went along.
Yeah, this is actually, and you got to have some empathy here for I know it's like not okay to do, but they're dealing with most likely somebody with cancer.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to give you some this thing, but not an additional 50 doses.
Right.
In which case, you're not doing a trial, you're treating.
I've worked with a lot of investigators doing IITs, and a lot of them are really there for the patients.
No, I don't blame them for being there for the patient, but either you need to decide whether you're doing clinical research or you are actually treating the patient. If you're doing clinical research, there's a protocol, follow it.
Yeah.
If you're treating the patient, you don't need to do any of that, but then there are other rules that kick into play.
A lot of times they just want to use research as a loophole to get to treatment.
Yes,
for the patient.
And that's the problem.
I know, but it's hard not to empathize with the doctors doing that, even though it's not okay to do because it's research still. But We've
It's
had these
also more than that.
conversations with doctors
Yeah.
thinking of doing IITs, and
Yeah.
that's the mentality. And
Well,
it's
hold on.
usually
So,
to extend life, quality of life for the patients. It's generally not like a get rich quick type of thing.
like, except there are those types of examples as well. I know of
Yeah,
physicians who will say, you know what, I charge for the clinical trials, and you're gonna do all this
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. There's
So
that.
you see those as well. And again, it goes to how do you respond. So this is where I often help with 483s and responses, because we talked about that actually. Like, what does a good response look like? People will
Right.
often go, "Oh, I did this, I won't do that." Well, how are you going to prevent it? What's your actual kappa process? How do you know that
Yeah.
was the root cause? None of that stuff is outlined. Um,
Yeah. They didn't follow the protocol. They
that seems
didn't
to keep
like the
coming up.
protocol that the FDA approved was not
Correct.
what they deviated from it a lot, it
Yep.
looks like. And unlike the grant fraud people that go to jail, um,
So
or
these
can go
guys,
to jail.
you're getting a warning letter is not a good sign. You
Right.
may not be looking at jail, but you may be looking at worse things like just being banned. That
Banned
might
from
pop up.
research. I don't think
Yeah.
that's worse than jail, man. Jail.
Well,
You
it
could be
depends.
banned
Would you rather
banned
have
from
no
research.
work? No, banned from research, but you might also get banned from submitting anything to HHS.
Yeah, better than prison, man. Are you kidding?
I guess that's true. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, man.
You're right. You're right. But here's the other part. They were depending on the CRO. So, for example, you were saying you were effectively acting as the CRO in some cases, or at least as a consultant of some kind. And this person thought that the CRO was handling the IND and communication with the FDA. And they basically, the CRO goes, no,
Yeah.
you, you did not instruct you to submit the amended protocol, but rather to whatever itself. And there was none of that stuff was being communicated. Essentially, they were just making shit up, as you said.
Right.
So you need, again, it goes to, if you're doing an investigator-initiated study, you need to have clear plans in place, clear protocols in place. You're doing two things. You're responsible for both things at that point. And the reason why sponsors take so long to decide things, and they have their own processes they follow. If you want to do it, you can, but just be very, very careful, because as you can see here,
colloquially, we like to say you're doing too much.
yeah, yeah.
And
Or
for
like if
whatever
you're,
reason, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but
yeah,
you got to
it's
follow
often
the.
easier to do in like a hospital or the like, because they have resources.
Yeah.
It's hard to do when you're doing it as part of a small site. IRB
The small
approval was a
sites aren't
problem as
doing
well.
this. Small sites aren't doing this. Although I've been involved with an IIT that ran out of patients at their private public institution hybrid, and then
Yeah.
they asked me to find them sites they were not the PIs, they were the sub-Is, right? And then they worked under the original PI. So there are ways that private sites can get into this kind of stuff, but it's very
They can
rare.
do it. It's just very, very complicated, and they're doing a
Yeah.
lot, like you said.
And I had to monitor this study. So I was making sure it's protocol compliance and all that stuff.
The problem, what you land up doing, here's the problem you land up having. As the sponsor, you have all the responsibility, except you've never been a sponsor. You don't even know what responsibility you have.
Right. That's why they hired us to monitor. They're like, hey, at least have a monitoring layer here for protocol
But it's not
compliance.
only about monitoring. There's so much more that goes into being a sponsor. But like communications with the FDA. Who's responsible for that?
They handled that. They handled that.
Except that's this in this situation, he was like, "Oh no, the CRO's handling it," and turns
Yeah.
out that level of communication. Here's what you do. Here's what I do. Here's what you do.
Yeah.
Here's what I do.
Yeah.
That never happens.
Yeah.
So
This
you have
is
to be
great,
really
man.
careful.
We need to do thank you so much for coming on, Darshan. Like this
As
was
always,
amazing.
pleasure as always.
We got to do entire pod, the next one on those two topics, grant fraud and
Yep.
the DCT stuff you love,
DCT
telehealth
stuff
nonsense.
sounds good. Always a
Like,
pleasure to be on here.
subscribe, comment, share, and one more. Connect with Darshan. His
Yes,
LinkedIn is underneath.
thank
He
you.
doesn't charge 5,000 an hour, not yet. So he's very reasonable, very approachable. He'll
Thank you.
even give you free advice via
I have
email.
done that before in some cases.
Always. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Bye bye.